This is Dr. Dennis L. Waters Sr. I am presenting here on I Will Restore podcast and I Will Restore blog talk radio program a presentation that was entitled Restoration of the Self. This is a representation of a class that was done by myself, and it is a lesson series that was done. The lesson series was a total of 15 hours. It was 5 weeks that were conducted in 3-hour sessions that was conducted. So it's 15 hours of teaching, and the course is entitled Restoration of the Self. And what we have this time is the actual introduction of the course. So that's what you're listening to, or will be listening to, in just a few moments. It is called the Restoration of the Self. It's about 30 minutes or a little over 30 minutes long. I think it's 31 minutes. And it's me talking about the course. Listen, I believe you'll be blessed. Again, if you want to contact us, send an email to iwillrestore.com. Bless you. Send, of course, to info@iwillrestore.com. info@iwillrestore.com. And if you want additional information on this course so that you get it in a podcast or MP3 as a complete course, then just mention Restoration of the Self and we will get that to you. Bless you.
Solved all fear and has cast out all doubt, and that my word shall indeed cause me to receive only that which is good. And so it is this day, and so we let it be by saying, and so it is. Amen. Again, welcome to everyone. We are so glad that you are here. We're excited about this course on the restoration of self, this idea that within us, within each individual, there resides this greater self, this higher self. I named my higher self a number of names, actually. One, and it speaks of the me that I am, that I desire to be. If I should live 1,000 lifetimes, or if I should live for 10,000 years, whatever it may be, whatever the dream is, the best that I could ever be. And I've named my higher self, this self that we're seeking to restore, Big deal. My name is Reverend Dr. Dennis L. Waters. My mother named me Dennis L. Waters, and she called me Den Lee. And so my big self, my higher self, I've named to be Big D.L. Waters. That's my higher self. Another one is the name, Reverend Dr. Dennis L. Waters. Again, the highest vision that I have for myself is caught up in that title, in this desire to be a beneficial presence, someone who actually contributes to this earth to make it a better place, a earth, a planet that works for everybody. And so we're going to look at this restoration of self as we go forward. And as we begin this morning, what I would like to do is just go over the initial, the course syllabus that I have. Before I go forth with anything else, I'd like to just review the course syllabus. And the course is entitled The Restoration of Self. And self is capitalized. And we mentioned in the course description that it's recovery from traumatic experiences, including physical and sexual abuse and loss, whether it is a loved one, health, a job, or a career. Then it's discover what remains when it seems all is lost. This course includes the defining of and exploration of the self and invites you to participate in deep inner growth work using the restoration ministry model as a spiritual practice. So you're invited to actually participate in this inner growth work, and we're going to talk about that for a period of time as we go forth, and also the restoration ministry model, as a spiritual practice. And we will go over that and assist you in understanding that. We mentioned in this item that it is a 5-week course, and it is 3 hours. It goes from 9 to 12 Eastern Standard Time, and from 6 to 9 in Pacific Standard Time. And so it is a 3-hour course that is taught over the course of 5 weeks. We're going to be together for 5 weeks. And so that is a total of 15 hours that we are going to be actively engaged in the teaching of this course. But let me say, in regard to that, even as we begin to go forth, there are some components, of course, that you will need to do in between the classes, and those will take time. And what I want to encourage you to do, to ignite within you, to activate within you, is a commitment that is born of your desire to restore this self, to discover and to be able to deploy this self that has been designed by the infinite, the you that you were intended and are intended to be, to actually activate that individual during the course of this 5 weeks, whatever it takes. When I was in college, and a little about me, my doctorate is out of Howard University School of Divinity. I've attended both Andrews University, also Oakwood College, and then the University of Maryland. Those were my, so to speak, formal teachings and earned degrees that I have out of those particular schools. I've also gone to other schools to learn and to be instructed and to be mentored. I've attended some sessions by a group that's called Peak Potentials, and we go through a series of courses over the course of about a year and a half, and I was immensely blessed by that particular course as well, or that particular line of study curriculum that was done by them. I've also attended the University of Transformational Studies in L.A. That is under the guidance of the Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, and the Agape International Spiritual Center. So those are some of the places where I have received the invitation to transformation, or the invitation that says, come up higher, be more, and realize this self that is within. So those are some of the things. In Andrews, I remember that there was a time when the professor, I had about 5 classes, that was done on a quarterly basis, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, a period of about 13 weeks. And every one of the courses required that we read at least 5,000 pages of text during that time, at least 5,000 pages. So I had about 25,000 pages to do. And I read very deliberately, taking notes and all of that, but I was determined that I would I would actually take this course and I would benefit. And so, of course, what I did was I read 5,000 pages for each one of those courses to make sure, again, that I understood and I participated in class, and I was greatly benefited from doing that or by doing that. And so I want to encourage you to, in regard to the inner work, in regard to what we might call homework, or work that you do between the classes, that you actually commit to doing that work for your own personal benefit and your own going forward. Because when you locate this higher self, you will have a desire to live that life. You will often sit and visit and then live out what you have seen as you have looked within and found this higher self and the great benefit that this person will bring forth in this world, how it will indeed benefit and change this world and make it a better place and solve what seem to be insolvable problems that are present in this day and time, because you will be moving, acting, living from this higher dimension, or what one said, to be in the world but not of the world, or to call things that are not as though they were. These things you will be able to do because you live as this higher self. And so I want to encourage you to seek that individual, to move forward into that individual, to be that individual, no matter what your past has been, because we're going to look at this aspect of recovery from traumatic events, and whether it was physical, sexual abuse, or any type of trauma whatsoever, and we'll bring that in and talk about that somewhat. Then it says, the purpose of this class is identification and the owning of yourself, your life. Participants will explore ancient Egyptian teaching concerning the individual 5 selves. The Egyptian way, Egypt, of course, on the continent of Africa, went there in 2005. It was glorious. It is one thing to see a symbol of a pyramid, at least for me. It is something quite different to be next to the pyramid and to feel the energy of that particular pyramid. There's actually a statement where I was watching a few days ago. It was talking about the pyramids, and it was talking about this whole aspect of time. And it says that around these great, massive objects, these pyramids, time as it is measured actually slows down. There is a presence that is a pyramid. There's a presence that is there. On this continent of Africa, where all life, as far as we know, begun, that there's this presence that is there. And we want to look at these 5 selves that are mentioned in the ancient Egyptian teachings. Next, we want to examine various texts, including the biblical tradition that speaks of the Self Khitan within the conscious self and what is involved in awakening the higher self. There is, and it cannot be, you cannot escape it in any type of way, but all spiritual traditions or religious traditions have this teaching within it of the higher self, the original self, the authentic self, and that teaching is also in the Bible. Whether it is when they're called to be born again, to put away those things that have before tripped you up and caused you to fall down and struggle over all kinds of minor, insignificant things, which has to do with anything really that comes forth in this touch world, touch world, this feel world, this see world, this world in which we have the 5 senses, because this is what one would call an effect. This is after the thought has taken place, whether you consider that the thought of your own thought or the thought of someone else who had a thought and then produced whatever it is that we see or touch or feel, that kind of thing, or whether it is in the mind of God. The thought was there, and we want to move into this realm of spirit. And so all traditions have this idea of the higher self. And really, when I think about it, I think it is really everywhere. I don't think of it as being something. I think it's in the movies that we look at today. I think it's in the movies of the past, and we're going to refer to some of that as we go forward. I think it's in the writings of individuals. We'll look at the writings when I grew up and was in high school a few years ago. There was the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. In particular, I think that every student in my generation actually had to read Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance, that particular essay that he wrote. And there is a quote that I'll come back to in regard to that. It is in the writings of individuals like Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. All of these kinds of things. I think, therefore I am. These kinds of statements that are made. And so we'll look at those. We'll examine the teachings of various esoteric traditions regarding the lower self, the higher self, the God self, the Buddha self, the Krishna self, and others. So that'll be also an item that we'll look at. And then we'll examine the effect of trauma, loss, abandonment, betrayal, and other events on the self and the self. That is, how these things impact the self, the lower self, and then how they then also impact the higher self, and what is involved with that. And we will consider and apply the statement made by Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, whom I look to as a mentor, as someone who's gone ahead and traveled in some places that I am traveling even now. But he has a statement that says, a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. And then we will adopt the restoration ministry model as a spiritual practice or a component model of spiritual practice. And we'll talk about the restoration ministry model and what is involved in regard to that. And then let me speak to the required text and some things that we will share with you and be referencing and coming forth in regard to that, the required text. So those are our purpose, the purposes that we are seeking and moving toward, that we're intending to accomplish during this class time together. And then the text. All classes that are taught by myself, Reverend Dr. Dennis L. Waters, all classes that are taught by myself, require some specific text. One is, I will restore. It's a ministry of healing to facilitate the healing and restoration of individuals who have been impacted by any kind of trauma. In particular, we look at the aspect of physical and sexual abuse, but it's really any traumatic experience that a person has had in life. And trauma, as I define it within my book, is any experience in which an individual is overwhelmed to the point that all of their defenses or all abilities to stop whatever it is from happening, those are all overcome. And so there's a traumatic experience that a person has. It could be something like a hurricane or a tsunami or an earthquake or all of the above occurring. It is a traumatic experience, something that in the midst of life, that as far as you knew, that after preparing for everything, here appears something that you had no recourse to deal with. You were unprepared. It was unexpected. It just simply came. That's a traumatic experience. So when we look at trauma, and my particular book deals with this aspect of physical sexual abuse because of the aspect that it is something that the individual who is being abused did not invite, did not expect. And so that book looks at that. And then there's Through the Gate to Everything Great, which is our spiritual strategic life planner. And we want you to look at that and begin to envision the life of this higher self. We do a class that we call the 4D life. And in that we talk about this higher self and how an individual is to dream that, imagine that. We do a class during this semester as well that I'm doing later today that is visualization. And again, we are giving various tools and various techniques and talking about various experiences and just, again, with the intent of activating within you this desire to live this life, this 4D life, the life of the higher self. And so we give this spiritual strategic life planner in order to assist in that process as one of the tools. Also, there are texts that are entitled Know Thyself by Dr. Naeem Akbar, A-K-B-A-R. A-K-B-A-R is Naeem Akbar. There are some concepts inside of this book, in particular as we look at the Egyptian idea of self, what is involved with that we want to look at, that are found inside of the book by Dr. Naeem Akbar, entitled Know Thyself. Know Thyself. And again, these teachings of Know Thyself, the words are seen all over the world. They're found in movies. One of my favorite movies, 1999, was the original The Matrix. And if you're familiar with this movie, there is this time when Neo, who is the main character, is coming in to see the Oracle. And when he comes in to see the Oracle, over his head as he comes through the door, there's an item that is written in Latin above that. And it says, really, know thyself. This ancient Egyptian text, know thyself. There are texts inside of things like the Bible where it says it's better to have control and to master oneself than to take over an entire city. And so it is vital that we look at these particular texts and gain an understanding. And Dr. Akbar is speaking to a particular population, a particular constituency, but we want to look in and grab the gleam of what he's saying and pull out this particular principle. And let me say this in regard to many things that I also teach, the way that I teach what I do. There's a statement that my daddy loved to fish, and he would bring home his catch and everything like that. He loved to fish. He would take me fishing, and I have memories of that. He was a great fisherman. I do a different kind of fishing, but he was a great fisherman. And when it came to cleaning the fish and everything like that, and then eating the fish, there's a statement that comes from that experience. And I use that to talk about what we're saying here. In regard to anything that you are exposed to, whether it is what I'm saying, the books that I'm recommending, my recommendation to you is what I call eat the meat and throw the bones away. Eat the meat and throw the bones away. In other words, pull out of anything that you are exposed to only that which is beneficial to you. Pull out of that only that which is beneficial to you, no matter what the bones may look like, no matter what the bones may say, no matter what the bones are. In life, eat the meat, throw away the bones. And so we'll look at Dr. Akbar's writings here. As I said, he's writing to a particular population, but just so we have a visual of that which we are going to be talking about, we'll mention things out of that particular book. The next text is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth Thy Day, Book of Enlightenment. It's by Dr. Muata Ashby. There is this concept that, again, that is mentioned in so many places. There's so much about Egypt and what went on there so many millennia ago that has been used in various ways. When we think about a book that is entitled The Book of the Dead, the way that it came to me initially the first time I'm hearing it, it's like some mysterious book that has some kind of desire to do me harm, if you will, or something that I shouldn't read. When I got Dr. Ashby's book, and another book that I will mention is called Becoming Osiris, The Ancient Egyptian Death Experience by Ruth Shukman, Telmi, and Stefan Rossini. And those are texts that I recommend that you have. What I begun to understand is something that is taught in various schools in various places. And again, it has to do with this higher self and lower self, moving from one to the other. And what I understood as I read these books is that the idea within the Egyptian culture that we see as the taking care of the remains of the Pharaoh who has died, the mummification process and the ceremonies that went along with that. That's not really the focus of the rituals or the techniques and processes that they went through. The real focus occurs in the life of the Pharaoh, where he's asked to be Pharaoh, someone who rules all of Egypt, this empire that lasted for 5,000 plus years. This empire, he was to rule it. And in order to rule it, he had to be his best self. So there's this process that individuals went through, and what I call, you had to die. You were born first, given birth by your parent, by your mother. You were born, and then to enter into this new life, you had to die. You had to die, just like the statement that says you must be born again. You had to die. And rather than an abrupt death, so to speak, an abrupt dying, an individual was led through a process so that they would see the benefit and understand what was the overall benefit of dying to self so that they could rise, in this case, to be the Pharaoh who would be a beneficial presence to all of Egypt and indeed all of the world. And so we want to look at this particular book of enlightenment, the book that brought a person to the aspect of understanding their higher self. We want to look at that and, again, take specific things out of that particular book. And then there are additional items that we mentioned, additional books, and after we do this, we'll just take a break and take any questions that might come, that we recommend that you purchase, not just for this class, but for really any class that you might take going forward in regard to this, what we will call now your spiritual journey. You have registered for this class. You are now attending the class. And so there's something that has drawn you here. There is something that resonates within you. And if you know it already, then we celebrate that. If you sense it, we celebrate that. In some type of way, you've recognized that you are on a particular spiritual journey. And so we are all on a journey. We're all on this path. And these tools, these books that we mentioned, are some that have helped me. You may find others. I'm certainly welcome and open. I am a reader. I got that from my mother. And so, and I just cultivate it. I love to read. I feel that I'm having a dialogue with the author, and they can put so much of their life inside of a few pages. And there's sometimes something that I can read and dialogue with the author, write notes and everything like that, ask questions, and then answers will come. And I see this whole aspect of having a dialogue. So these are some of the books. One is This Thing Called You, and then also The Science of Mind. And I have the 1938 edition of The Science of Mind. Then also A New Design for Living. So that's 3 books that we will mention. This Thing Called You, The Science of Mind, and then A New Design for Living. All books by Ernest Holmes. All of these books by Ernest Holmes. You buy them, read them over the course of time, do the affirmations that are found in these books as well, all of those kinds of things, and you will be greatly benefited. So let me recommend that you actually consider that particular book or those particular books. And then there's another book, again, by my mentor, my teacher, someone that I look to, not just simply to teach me, but to model in a particular kind of way, a particular level, particular vibration, this whole aspect of what it means to live as the higher self. And so one of the individuals that has benefited me is Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. And his book, I have a few of his books, a few of the books that I'll recommend to you perhaps in other classes. But this particular class, there is a book that is entitled Spiritual Liberation by Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. And these additional books I may refer to, talk about, and everything, pulling from a number of angles, from a number of places, refer to those books and everything. And by being acquainted with what we're going to be doing, what you're going to be reading and understanding, then you will be able to travel on this journey that we're taking together. You'll be able to travel on this journey that we're taking together in regard to that. Now, that's our syllabi, our syllabus for this class. We welcome you. We have a download that we'll tell you how those downloads are going to be made available for you. And then also, as we go forward and everything, we will talk about each one of these particular items and go forth. And we want to just, for a moment, receive any questions that you may have, and any questions you may have about what we've covered up to this point. We've gone rather quickly, and so if there are questions, then we want to pause for a moment and just take those questions.